Hey, are you good at your job? Are you really good at your job? Even if you're great at your job, you're probably not awesome at your job. Mockaitis is an award-winning trainer who helps professionals perform optimally at work. He hosts the How to Be Awesome at Your Job podcast at awesomeatyourjob.com. Today, he tells Thor some tricks of the trade on the Peak Performers podcast.
Welcome to this edition of Peak Performers Podcast
with your host, Thor Conklin.
Thor will be sharing the necessary tools, strategies, and psychology you'll need to become a peak performer in any area of your life or business.
Pete, thank you so much for joining us today. I know the audience is going to get so much out of today's episode. Hey, start us off with your awesome podcast, Awesome at Your Job. Tell us why you started it.
Well, it's interesting. I had a previous podcast before called the Student Leadership Podcast, which doesn't really exist anymore. And that started because a friend of mine just said to me, I demand you start a podcast. And I was doing a little bit of speaking on college campuses. Actually, Jess Ekstrom, her agency and mine are the same, Campus Speak. So shout out there. Nice. Previous guest of yours. Yeah. And so it was kind of fun. I was digging it, but I didn't have a whole lot of focus. And I think a number of podcasts suffer from this these days. Is like, I talked to anybody I thought was cool and could somehow connect it to student leadership because I was speaking on the topic. But then later on, I was getting some real traction with another program I had for corporate teams. And I thought, it'd be really fun if I could interview some of my favorite, speakers, authors, etc., who all had something to say about sharpening the universal skills required to flourish at work. And we could turn it into a careers podcast, and that could maybe build some exposure for some of these trainings that I'm doing. So that's kind of where it started, and it has just been taken off. It's been really exciting.
It's so funny you say that. Literally, I just got done with my production team, and we're doing some filming on an upcoming program, online course that we're creating about training teams and employees at work, because so often the executives get the skills that you and I work when we work with the executives one-on-one, and they're like, well, this is great, but I need some help for my teams. So tell us what. That's
exactly how it started. It was I was coaching someone. He's like, you know what? I think my whole team should know this. I was like, well, let's figure something out. And so we made a program.
Right. Exactly. I mean, you can't do it one-on-one. You got to figure out some, a different way to do it. So tell us a little bit about that program.
Oh, sure. Well, it's called the Enhanced Thinking and Collaboration Program, or ETC. I think of it as sort of like et cetera, sort of, and the rest of things you need to flourish at work beyond just sort of like your technical competence and know-how. So we cover a lot of things that come from my strategy consulting background in terms of using hypothesis-driven thinking and answer-first succinct communication, as well as some of my other favorite discoveries from just being a really addicted to learning all this personal and professional development stuff into about sort of 10 nice little modules. So about 10 weeks, 90 minutes a week, I kind of rock it with a team, and it's been really exciting to see kind of the before and after results. Like we're seriously making a difference here and resulting in lots of saved time and not doing suboptimal things at work, and instead putting time to good, fun, productive use, which really adds up to quite a sum of savings when you think about it over the years.
Yeah, it's crazy. The title of our episode or of the class is Critical Business Skills, the things you didn't teach you in college. And it's crazy, right? You go to college, you learn all this stuff, and then you go into the workforce, and it's like, well, wait a second. What do you mean you can't balance your checkbook? What do you mean you don't understand time management? There's so many things that need to be taught afterwards.
So true. And the learning never stops, because the world keeps changing. So it's fun and exciting when you're able to share a piece of knowledge and someone receives it and then they put it into practice and they say, yes, life is better now. It's just a rush, and it's why I do what I do.
Yeah. Did you say answer first was one of the modules?
Oh, right. Yes.
What is that?
Oh, so this is just sort of an approach to communication that recommends putting the answer first. So that's maybe a difference from how we often tend to communicate in terms of chronological stories. So we might say, Well, I was checking my email and I got a pretty interesting one from this guy, Thor. And he has an interesting website where he does different training things and he worked with Tony Robbins and it was really kind of fun. And so from it, he was inviting me to participate on a podcast. And so I went through his calendar system and it was pretty helpful. And, all that. And we are talking on this Thursday. And so that's kind of the narrative kind of chronological story format of sharing the results or how something happened. But in many business collaborative teaming environments, it is more efficient and productive for a group to hear things in an answer first format. So I could say, hey, this Thursday, I am doing a podcast interview with Thor. And it should be really fun because he has, these things going on. And so by inverting it, it quickly lets people understand, wait, what is this about? What are the implications for me? And then formulate their questions and respond appropriately. So that's just sort of one approach, and that they really add up in terms of making it for more efficient, effective collaborations when you put all the tools together.
No question. And you just made every single male out there very, very happy. They're trying to figure out how to make their wives get to this point, right? I don't want to hear the whole story. Just tell me what the answer is. Get to the point.
Well, it's so funny. At Bain, we even had a little yellow arrow pointing downward on the bottom of a slide, which would point to sort of a key implication or takeaway from that slide. And then even in the parlance there at the firm, folks would ask each other, what's the down arrow? And it's so, talk about jargon. Outsiders are like, what does that even mean? You consultants, please. But then my friends started asking me if I got rambly. Pete, what's the down arrow?
Yeah, it is. It's very common, especially, and this is not a knock on women at all. I don't mean that way. But feminine energy and women have a tendency to want to explain and go into what's considered a meta report of having to give all the details before they tell you what the story's about. And men are just like, would you please just get to the point?
I hear you.
Tell me the answer. Tell me on the podcast, I always find it's really interesting in the people that I interview. I learn so much. What are some of the things and the takeaways you've learned throughout the years?
Oh my gosh.
I know that's a broad question.
It is so much. It is so much. I mean, I don't even know where to start. So I'm almost going to have to go at random to, sort of what's just latest in terms of things popping up for me. And so I think that, one theme that really comes up again and again is just, sort of self-knowledge and awareness. But I had this guest, Dr. Michael Bruce, who wrote this book, The Power of When. And so he's like this sleep doctor who's got a whole lot of notoriety. He's always, if that's the right word, fame and adulation, I should say, positive words. And so he's on the Dr. Oz show frequently and all that. So Dr. Michael Bruce in episode 63 was talking about how our bodies biochemically just have these natural rhythms. And so I've known a little bit about that. But in fact, they can vary genetically by person. He calls these chronotypes. And he uses a fun little animal system, like, are you a wolf, or are you a bear, are you a dolphin, etc. And so sure enough, in his book, he sort of maps out the different times of the day it may be optimal for you to do things. And so by sort of taking his quiz, reading his book, and just paying attention to my body, I've really zeroed in, like, yes, there are these times. And particularly for me, just before 10 a.m., I am so alert and sharp and energetic and motivated, like reliably, just about every day after day. And so I choose to strategically then do my highest value stuff right then and there, so that I am at my peak. I'm being a peak performer during that hour and a half. and I can just like slash through any kind of resistance or difficulty. It's like a video game. If you've played Mario Brothers, you catch that star and you're invincible for like a limited amount of time. Like, that's how I feel. It's like, let's run through all the bad guys right now because I'm unstoppable.
That is awesome. So which animal were you?
I was a bear, and we comprise the majority of folks in the U.S., and so we tend to naturally arise around your 7 a.m.-ish time frame.
Okay. I thought you were going to say they eat a lot in the fall and then they sleep all winter.
Oh.
That might describe part of the United States.
Oh yeah, and it's so interesting how you can also kind of just track your own energy levels and determine it naturally. But this sort of accelerated that process for me by giving me something to test. I can confirm or disprove this hypothesis that these will be my cycles, and sure enough, it's been really cool to zero in on that. So I will not schedule any kind of a call or conversation unless it is super important, high impact stuff, and I will not answer emails during this time or clean something or do any kind of administrative thing. It's like we're doing the big stuff with the best of me.
Yeah, I did the same thing several months ago. I realized that the most productive time and my best thinking was first thing in the morning. And I was always going to the gym. And of course, I was at the gym and I'm making notes and I'm creating content when I'm at the gym, right? Because I'm just in the zone. And I finally realized, I said, look, I need to be at my desk. I need to be working now. And if I've got to work out, at night, even when I'm tired and I don't want to do it, that's the time I got to do it. I got to push those activities to the time where I'm not in my zone.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that was just one example of a guest who's shared some things. And I said, oh, wow, I'm going to be doing that right away.
Yeah, it's amazing. We learn great things from guests. For the last 16 years, I've been driven by the question of why some people achieve amazing results and others don't. The answer? 90% of their success came from their psychology. So if 90% of their success comes down to their psychology, what was the one thing that enabled them to produce the results that others were not? Their ability to execute, their ability to get things done. Now, we all know how to get things done, but some of us do it better than others. And some of us are not even coming close to tapping our potential. So if you're truly committed to tapping your potential and really becoming a peak performer and getting the results that you need, want, and desire, take your phone and text the word BESUMMIT. That stands for Business Execution Summit. One word, BESUMMIT, and text that to 41411. I'm going to send out some additional information on our upcoming event that will truly teach you the science of execution. You have the opportunity to work with some really world-class executives. What are some of the commonalities that these executives portray that is common amongst most of them? Either, they've got really good work routines, they have, exercise. What is it about them that makes them special and successful?
One thing I think is really interesting is just that sense of, ambition and ownership. It's like there's not a whole lot of waiting around for anything at all to come to them. It's like they're proactively thinking, okay, what's next? What do I have to do? What are the best resources I can marshal for that? What are the keys and steps to make it happen? And so it's very much sort of being proactive and in the driver's seat there. And I would say that they get a genuine sense of energy, fulfillment, in some cases, for the worst, self-worth, and they can feel like unworthy if they're underperforming or something, and you got to kind of comfort folks a bit. So I think that's the scoop, is like they're genuinely invested in what they're about in a big way, as opposed to just kind of being in the passenger seat and hoping things work out all right.
Many times it's not what we're doing, but the things getting in the way that we don't see. What are some of the things that you're finding that these executives are tripping up on that they just don't know are there and you're pointing out to them?
Well, it's interesting is that in some ways it's not so much that they don't know they're there, but they have so much input coming in from so many places, it's hard to really know what is true, relevant, most important, least important. And so I think that's part of the thing, is just sort of stop and shine a light on things and dig a little deeper, and then you'll discover, oh, wait, this is really the approach that is going to be way, way, way more impactful than that thing. Why was I even worrying about that thing? I should outsource that to someone else to worry about. So I think that's what's interesting is it's not so much that it's things are blindsiding them so much as it is that there are many things and it's unclear, which things deserve a disproportionate amount of their time, attention, and priority.
And are you finding that most of them are able to see these things themselves, or do they need someone, a consultant, an advisor, a coach to help them uncover these?
Oh, sure. Well, it really varies case by case, but and
Sure.
sometimes there's just so much activity and demand and moving from thing to thing to thing that it can really be helpful if you can just hire another brain to go to town on it for a little while. And then you can say, okay, yes, that you did all that work that I didn't have time to do, and that makes great sense. So it'll vary, but I mean, I think that it's important to have the capabilities in your organization that are most critical for just sort of your survival and flourishing, and to not outsource your brain on sort of, I guess, maybe the core things on a long-term basis, is to make sure that you're building in those capabilities.
Execution. It all comes down to execution. Ideas are great, but if you can't execute, nothing else matters. What are the keys to execution for you?
Oh, boy. Well, I think for me, it really boils down to having it planned, locked and loaded, like in the calendar or the whiteboard or the spreadsheets. It just needs to happen. So, for example, a couple months ago, I got married. Yay!
Congratulations.
Oh, thank you. And so there is some executing to be done in terms of making all that come together. And so it was funny how in the early stages of wedding planning, we just sort of said, okay, we got a little to-do list. Okay, I got this and then this and then this. All right, that's fine. And then I'd say come 3 months before, it's like, oh my goodness, there are tons and tons of things. And it kind of like created stress just thinking about all the things and then remembering all the things. And so ultimately, my now wife and I, we sat down. I was like, okay, we just need to collect all the things. And so this reminds me a little bit of your David Allen GTD, getting things done stuff. But we sat down, we made the wedding tasks master list Google sheet, and we have it up right now. 91 tasks, and each one saying, what's the task? Who owns it? When's it due? Roughly how many hours will it take to complete? What percent is it done now? What is the next action? And then you can run some analytics off that to see, well, just how many hours per day do we need to be investing in order to pull this thing off? And so it was a relief, and it worked, and it was my favorite wedding and many guests' favorite weddings as well.
You didn't even have to tell me that you worked at Bain. I could tell just from that story. You're definitely ex-Bain.
Oh, yeah, that's true. That's true. And then the model that estimates the expenses as well was at work.
Thank you so much for listening today. I really do appreciate your time, and I hope you found today's show valuable. If you would like to receive these shows automatically to your phone or to your computer, simply go to iTunes and subscribe. After listening to several of the shows, if you're so inclined, please leave us a 5-star rating, as this helps us reach additional people and spread the message. If you're truly committed to taking your life to the next level and doing whatever it takes to become a peak performer, but something's holding you back, something is blocking your way, and you just can't seem to figure out what it is, send me an email to info@thorconklin.com, and I'd be more than happy to get on the phone with you. We'll schedule a 15-minute discovery call. No obligation, no cost. I absolutely love to hear from the listeners, and if there's something I can do to help, I'd be more than happy to do that. Also, if you found something of great interest in today's show and you want to share that with your friends and family, simply go to my Facebook page, Thor Conklin, click on the episode, hit the share button, and share it on your page. You can follow me at Twitter @Thor Conklin. The website is thorconklin.com. We're constantly adding new free resources, discussing additional tricks, tips, tools, and strategies on how to be a peak performer. Remember, I try to keep these episodes short so you can listen to them during dot time, doing other things, commuting, driving, walking, working out. Decide to be a peak performer in all that you do. And until tomorrow, have an absolutely amazing day.
And that does it for part 1 of our interesting interview with Pete Mockaitis. Be on the lookout for part 2, where Pete and Thor discuss partnerships, marketing, and a whole lot more on the Peak Performers Podcast. We'll see you at the top.